morning, Tampa Bay. That's right. Good morning. You're listening to Down and Dirty. Thanks for tuning in. It's Friday morning. If it's 10 o'clock, where else are you going to be but listening to Down and Dirty? I'm Mario Nunez, your host, alongside my broadcast partner, John Dingfelder.
Good morning, Mario.
Good morning to you as well, sir. Make sure your microphone is turned nice and up there, John.
There you go.
Also, we've got Jason at the helm here. He's going to be doing all of the switching today. He's going to be doing all the sound effects. If that goes horribly wrong, Jason?
So much switching. So many sound effects.
It's all his fault.
It's a charcuterie board in here.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we've got so many guests today that it's going to be a lively show. We want to solicit for your commentary. We want to get you involved in the show because, as we say each and every week here on Down and Dirty, this is about inclusion. This is about a conversation with the community, and your voice is critical. So let me give you the contact information right up at the top. You can call us at 813-239-9663. You can email us at dj@wmnf.org. And if you want to text us, because that's your mode of communication, you can text us at 813-433-0885. Today on Down and Dirty, we're going to be talking about Florida's crazy, over-the-top growth. For those of us that have been here for a hot minute, we know because we feel it. We feel it organically when we're out on our roadways. And today we're going to be talking about whether, the resources that we have, as precious as they are, water, all of the things, electricity, the power grid, all of the things that we count on each and every day to make our lives comfortable and complete and whole, with all of the influx of these people coming to Florida, these people, right? The new people, those, them, they, all the pronouns available to us. Will we have enough of those resources for the future? We have three very special guests in studio with us to talk and discuss and debate. Their unique perspectives are important to this conversation today. John, who's in studio with us?
Well, you know what? We're going to keep that a little surprise.
All right. I like that.
We have two...
a little surprise sandwich early in the morning.
Two elected officials and one representative of the building and development community. So, Mario, it's interesting. We go in our bathroom every morning. We turn on the water. We take it for granted.
I do. I certainly do.
But water is a huge issue for all of us. We have enough right now, but for the millions of people who will be coming to Florida in the future,
ouch,
are we going to have enough water in the future? So about a month ago, I read in the Tampa Bay Times about a little Pasco town called Zephyr Hills. Some of you know it, I'm sure, just across the Hillsborough line to the north. And the article intrigued me and inspired me to invite these guests and talk about development, overdevelopment, water shortages, and the possibility even of building moratoriums. Because what happened up in Zephyr Hills is fascinating, and we have a representative from Zephyr Hills. But let me give you a couple of fun facts. I don't know how fun they are really in light of these issues, but about growth and water in Tampa Bay. Mario, did you know that from just over the last 2 years, 20 to 2022, Florida had 740,000 additional folks move to the state?
Ouch.
That's an average of 1,000 new residents per day. Now, that's across the whole state. But in regard to the Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, and Hernando, basically our listening audience from 2010 to 2022, we increased 500,000 people over that 12-year span. And they estimate, the folks who do this all over estimate that by 2050, we'll be looking at doubling our population to 5 million in the Bay Area. It's just crazy.
Please stop. Well, to be honest, and those of us that have been here long enough, we know, because when you throw around numbers like that, that's just overwhelming. We didn't have 250,000 people in the Tri-City area, the Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area, the whole time that we were in our youth.
I know. I mean, I remember Tampa. We were always number 3. Hillsborough County was always number 3 license tag.
That's right.
Pinellas was number 4.
And number 1 was?
Miami-Dade.
There you go.
Those haven't changed, but the numbers behind them have changed tremendously. I think we have a little song to intro this next segment.
Won't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
The great Joni Mitchell. Okay?
It's a beautiful song and a sad sentiment.
And appropriate, I think, for today's conversation. Well chosen by whoever it was that chose that song. Let me introduce Steve Spina. Correct?
Yes.
That's the way it says right here on my script. Who served as city manager for Zephyr Hills. Does anybody call it Z Hills?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes,
right?
we
It's
call
very
it
hip.
Z
It's
Hills.
very cool. It's very today. It's very young. And for the last 20 years, right? Is that correct? You've been city manager for the last 20 years?
For 20 years total. I retired in 2019.
And just like Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 3, just when you thought you were out,
I came
they
back.
pulled you back in.
Right.
Nice to have you here with us, Steve.
Thank you very much.
He couldn't stay away, right, Steve?
Right.
He brought some folks with him. We've got Billy Pose, the city manager, and
Kevin Weiss,
Kevin Weiss
our
is
Public
the
Information Officer.
public information
PIO.
officer. They're in the studio. I think they're there for backup, right, Steve?
Correct.
Well, Steve, listen, you and I go back a long way in our service to our communities, and I'm very impressed by yours. I think I read that you've been living in Zephyr Hills for 40 years and working for Zephyr Hills for most of that, I think, right?
Yes, I was the director of development. I got hired by the city of Zephyr Hills in 1987. I worked under the city manager at the time, Nick Nichols. And then in 1996, I was named city manager.
Excellent.
And I worked through until 2019. I retired. Then I did a little consulting work. I worked for as an interim town manager in Kansas City in Pinellas County. And then last year I did a stint as interim city manager in Temple Terrace for about 8 months.
Well, for those of our listeners who've never been to Zephyr Hills or aren't familiar with Zephyr Hills, tell us where it is, how big it is, what it's like.
Zephyr Hills is located in the southeast corner of Pasco County, like you said, just across the Hillsborough state line up Highway 301. It's now the largest largest city in Pasco County, population of about 18,000. And I think when I started working there, it probably had a population of about 7,000. So we've seen a lot of growth there over the years.
It's a sweet town, sweet little town, but you're experiencing tremendous growth. But associated with that, you've got water issues. How could you have water issues when every bottle at the grocery store says Zephyr Hills water?
Right.
Nice,
Well,
very
we're
nice
known
job.
as the city of pure water. And well, what's happened is we've just had, we had a lot of development coming in the early 2000s. The recession hit in 2007, 2008. Growth slowed down quite a bit. Then things have picked up quite a bit in the last couple of years. We've seen new development, new annexations, and the older developments have been renewed and everybody's developing at the same time. And we're looking at probably about 5,000 new homes in the next number of years. So what's happened is, in addition to traffic problems and just higher numbers, we're seeing that we're bumping up on our water use permit numbers that were permitted by SwiftMud to serve the community.
Now, how did that alarm get set off? I mean, who did you know that was coming? Did Billy, your city manager?
Our city manager and staff noticed it, recognized that with the number of new developments that are on the books, things that have been permitted and looked at, that we would be bumping up. We're permitted to pump 3.3 million gallons a day, I think. And if everything was online right now, we'd be up to about 4.9 million.
Steve, you made reference to SwiftMud. For those people that might not know exactly what that acronym stands for, what that means, we hear it all the time, SwiftMud. Give a little explanation, please.
It's the Southwest Florida Water Management District. And across the state, there's water management districts that are basically state agencies that control water permitting and usage and environmental aspects of that resource.
So it's
in
not
Florida.
fast-moving mud, just to be clear.
Right. It's not fast-moving.
Want it to be clear.
And they're very important in this conversation because they're the ones that adjudicate and make.
They permit the usage, right?
There you go.
So, and the staff has been looking at this for a while. I just got elected to city council in April, but what prompted a lot of this was running for election. During the campaign, I was hearing from residents saying, the growth is too fast, the traffic is too much. We're seeing apartment buildings go up. And then the city itself was doing its update of its comprehensive plan and recognized that there was water issues, access to water.
So what did you guys do about it?
So the city staff has applied for a increase in our water pumping.
Now, you said 3 million gallons a day, give or take, correct?
Right, 3.3 million.
So to put that in context, the city of Tampa has a water permit, I think, for about 120 million gallons per day. Right now, I think they generate, typically it's about 80 million gallons a day. So just to put it in context.
Right,
But,
right.
If you don't have that water, those taps don't turn on, right, Steve?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're a small player in the big picture, but we have our own water utility, so we have to be responsible to the people that we're serving. And we also provide service to an area outside the city in unincorporated Pasco County. So we're looking at, how we best serve the area. So between the campaign, realizing what staff was discovering when they were doing their comprehensive plan update, I brought up at the council meeting in April that maybe we need to look at a moratorium. And it was not only for water, but it was for the traffic issues. We're looking at density issues, some of the zoning issues. We haven't raised impact fees in Zephyr Hills for 5 or 6 years, 7 years. So we thought, if we put the brakes on, then we can look at all these issues, kind of get our ducks in a row, and then go back. And the moratorium does not impact commercial or industrial uses. So we're still dealing, with those types
It's
of
basically single family.
and apartments.
Or Steve, at very least, pump the brakes. You said hit the brakes, but at least pump the
Right,
brakes.
pump the
Because
brakes.
as we all know, and the saying goes, I believe, it's all fun and games until the rabbit has the gun. Or you can't flush your toilet.
Right.
Because if you don't have enough water pressure to flush your toilet, that can be a problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it can.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a problem. And, what we realize is that we just need to look at the big picture. Pump the brakes is a better way to put it, and make sure that we kind of have we're ready to keep moving on.
To be nimble in that instance.
And keep in mind that there's a number of projects, housing developments that are in the works already. Anybody who had a permit or had a plan approved is still working through. So we had a number of developments that are still going through the process.
Now, is it safe to say that this clearly this issue must be happening all over the state? I know you attend Florida League of Cities meetings and things like that. Are other towns doing the moratoriums like you?
Not that we know of. Other towns have done moratoriums for other issues. I know that New Smyrna Beach last year did a moratorium because they had a lot of flooding after one of the hurricanes, and they wanted to look at storm drainage issues and how to accomplish those in certain areas. I don't think it was a citywide moratorium, but I think we're the first ones probably that look at the water issue and the growth, the idea of the growth issues, kind of a collective growth issue.
I'm curious about pushback, but we're going to get to that when we introduce our next guest. Mario, who do we have?
Our next guest is Miss Jennifer Motzinger, who until recently served for 2 decades as the executive director of the Tampa Bay Builders Association. She's now a consultant, and we'd like to welcome Jennifer to our show.
Welcome, Jen.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here. So I have a question. When we talk about a moratorium, that's basically saying we can't handle what's coming at us, and it really speaks to the exacerbation of not being able to handle what's coming at you. And I get that. But did you include the building community in any conversations to see if you can put together some fixes before you decided to move forward with a moratorium?
And the moratorium's for how long, Steve? You might have
It's
mentioned
a
it.
1-year moratorium. We did deal with a lot of developers and in the planning community, advise them of what we were doing, and reached out to developers.
But did you ask them for help with solutions? And my point to that, because I have, look, I was born and raised in Tampa. I experienced the growth just the same as everybody else, and I can empathize with the transportation and the water issues, and those are very important. But at the same time, we can't bury our heads in the sand. We do have people coming, and there's no mechanism in place to stop them. You're just going to disperse them to surrounding areas. People will build houses and apartments for for folks when there's demand. So there's clearly a demand. Everybody wants our sunshine and our water. So we've got to figure out better ways to plan for that and deal with that. But there are funding mechanisms in place to help municipalities who experience this kind of demand. You can bond revenue streams, and the development community plays a huge role in this, and we have for, as far as I've been alive and been doing this work. But I would encourage you to lean in and have conversations with the development community, because they do have solutions, and it might be something that works for you specifically in Zephyr Hills, so that you can get water to the people that you service. And there's also transportation solutions. And unfortunately, this is a very cyclical business that developers and builders are in. So they build to demand, and that demand may not be there in 5 years. So,
it's interesting, Jen, that you mentioned being cyclical, and I agree completely. We've all seen it. And I think what happens is, and I'm not blaming anybody because we all do it, when folks are not coming, that fast, we all sort of slow down and catch up on other things and everything else. We don't expect this post-pandemic rush of people that happened.
Nobody could have seen that coming.
Right, and all this. Well, we should though, because and it seems to happen about every 10 years for different reasons. But anyway, it's kind of interesting. Mario, our third guest, is waiting very patiently, and she's very knowledgeable. On the
I
subject.
can't see her over the monitor here, but there she is waving at me. We all know. So let me just go ahead and say thank you to our third guest for being in studio. I'll say it up front. I got a hug before we went on the air. This is Mariela Smith, a community activist for decades. In 2018, she was elected to serve 4 years countywide at large on the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners. Today, she is here as a member of the Tampa Bay chapter of the Sierra Club, and we would like to say, Mariela, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to be in this very fascinating conversation with such great people with different perspectives on the issue. When I was on our Hillsborough County Commission, I also served on Tampa Bay Water, which is our regional water supplier for Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco counties. And one of the first things that I realized, I saw a slide presentation going by that shocked me. I said, wait, go back to that slide that showed that demand in South Hillsborough County, because we were experiencing such a great rate of growth in South Hillsborough County, demand was, the line of demand was heading up, and going to run into our water supply in 2024. We were planning to put in some new infrastructure then that would add to the water supply, but then we would run into that supply again in 2028. And it was a very dangerous situation for South Hillsborough County.
So, Mariela, it's summertime, okay? Every afternoon it's raining. But, people wonder, how can we possibly have a water issue? So is that a seasonal thing?
Well, it was a water supply issue for South Hillsborough County. It was a bit seasonal. It's actually a bit rush hour as well, because certain times of day, everybody's getting ready for work and taking a shower and making their coffee.
At the same time.
But we had real danger of our water pressure dropping. Our water pressure in South County had gotten down to where some days it was bumping at 30 pounds per square inch. And if it got into the low 20s, everybody south of the Alafaya River in the whole southern half of Hillsborough County would be on a boil water notice, and the fire hydrants would stop working. And as Mario noted, the toilets would stop flushing as well. That can all be a big problem. But we were having really bad water pressure issues. At the same time, I had been a leader on the board for doing exactly what Mr. Spina just did, and that was for putting in place a moratorium on development in southeast Hillsborough County.
And that was one of the reasons, I guess, water.
That was one of the reasons. It was largely, it was a whole host of infrastructure being outstripped by the fast growth and wanting to put a plan in place.
But Mariella, in 1985, the state legislature passed the Growth Management Act. Okay, that was supposed to solve all of our growth issues, that every county and municipality would, in advance of these issues, address that. And I think, Jennifer, you'd support that as well, address these things in advance. But I think we've all seen, especially those of us who've been around long enough, we've all seen that little by little, either at the state level or the local level, the Growth Management Act has been chiseled down. And I would assert that a lot of municipalities and counties are ignoring these issues until it's too late and the populations are already there. Jennifer, give us one on that.
And I appreciate that. And oftentimes what happens is, even though the funding source may be there, a lot of people don't want to see growth. So it puts the county commissioner or city council in a very delicate position, because you see something, an improvement coming, your road's going to get torn up or it's going to get improved upon. Lithia Pinecrest is a good example of that. And people show up, they say they don't want more growth, and guess what? The road doesn't get improved. 10 years later, the road doesn't get improved. 10 years later, guess what? There's 30,000 more people in one neighborhood, and you don't have that improvement in place. So it's a very delicate balance to address the needs of the people that live here today versus the people that live here tomorrow.
Mario, I think we have a call now.
We do have a caller. We want to bring him in. And thank you so much, caller, for participating in today's show. Caller, you're on the air. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, my name is Mike. I'm from Sarasota.
Mike, thank you for calling. Did you have a question or a comment for one of our audience members or our participants, I should say?
I do have a comment for everybody.
Okay.
And I would like to comment on the comment from the representative of the Builders Association.
All right, sir.
Be nice. That's the one thing we ask for.
You can get down and dirty, but just do it nicely.
I will be nice. I will be very civil. Not a single profane word.
Attaboy.
Okay, what she says is that growth is inevitable because growth is inevitable. She then goes on to say that because growth is inevitable, we can't have a moratorium. All we can do is just keep on building. Now, this is, to use a phrase she just used, sticking our heads in the sand, the Florida sand.
Okay. Jennifer.
Well, what I'm saying, and I appreciate the comment, and I will say that Florida is Florida. We're experiencing a lot of growth. My comment is really pointed at let's be smart about it. Let's find solutions to the problems that we have and move forward, because we do have a lot of positive things that are the result of growth. We have a thriving community, and we're able to do more things for our community. We want to preserve our quality of life and maybe even improve upon it. So let's get after the issues that we have, like water and transportation and other infrastructure, schools. Those are problems that can be addressed, but it takes people getting into a room and having conversations and not ignore the issue, because that does not solve the problem.
If you're just joining us now, you're listening to Down and Dirty with Mario Nunez and John Dingfelder on WMNF Community Radio 88.5. If you'd like to join us here and you'd have a comment for any one of our panelists, please call us at 813-239-9663. You can email us. Our emails are open, and we're waiting for your emails presently, dj@wmnf.org, or you can text us, 813-433-0885. Thanks for that call, Mike from Sarasota.
All right, so just as a recap, if you're just tuning in, we've got three distinguished guests with us today. We have former County Commissioner Mariella Smith from Hillsborough County. We have Jennifer Motzinger, who did 20 years as the Executive Director of the Tampa Bay Builders Association.
You make it sound like a prison
that's
sentence.
That's a sentence. She did 20. Are you still serving? Are you still serving time, Jen?
She's on probation.
Yeah, she's out.
She joined a gang. She lifted some weights. I mean, you're looking great.
And,
Very good.
And Steve Spina, who did who did and is doing. He didn't get enough. 20-something years as the city manager for Zephyr Hills, a small town in Pasco County, and he decided to return as a city councilman. And we appreciate all three of your service to our community. Steve, I'm not sure if you heard the question or the comment to Jennifer, but the person was a little critical. They said that basically Floridians, so we stick our head in the sand. Have you been accused of that in your capacity, in either of your capacities?
No, not really. But I think that there was kind of a consensus in Zephyr Hills that more needed to be done, and I think that was a consensus of the citizens, but also people working for the city. And our issue really was a permitted capacity, not distribution. The water is there, and
well, I was going to ask you that. Where do you guys get your water from?
we get our water from the aquifer
and wells.
Through wells. We have 7 or 9 wells.
But if you pump too much, there's environmental impacts, right, Marielle?
Absolutely. And that was also an issue of mine with Tampa Bay Water for South Hillsborough County, because the first solution that people reach for is just pump more water, because the surface water that you can pump out of rivers and the aquifer is the cheapest water you can get. Hillsborough County also gets water from, and the region, Pasco County, also gets water from desal and reservoirs, but that kind of infrastructure is all very, desalination plant, I meant by desal. That is all very expensive water. Pasco County also has a plant that purifies water for pharmaceutical industries, and that's possible as well, but very, very expensive water. Whereas,
but if you start pumping, and especially if you're close to the bay, then you've got that saltwater intrusion. Tell us about that.
Absolutely, there's a myriad of environmental impacts for if you start pumping more than is available. And Hillsborough County went through that, and John, you'll remember this as well, in the water wars of the 80s, where we were over pumping in North Hillsborough and South Pasco counties, and that was devastating impacts to the wetlands, and lakes were drawn down to nothing. And the Hillsborough River, in fact, also went through some issues with overpumping.
Right, and just a few years ago, we had a freeze during the winter, and the strawberry farmers started pumping like crazy to protect their strawberry fields, and they ended up with like 100 additional sinkholes up toward Plant City.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a localized problem, but really it just goes to show what can happen on the, it's like everybody flushing at the same time. This was everybody, all the farmers, good people turning on their wells. Mario, what do you got?
We've got a text message that just came in. It says, hello, great subject. Please, no toilet to tap ever. Bob of Largo. Bob, thank you for your text.
Charlie Miranda has entered the chat.
He has.
So this gentleman said no toilet to tap.
Ever. And
I'll tell you what, toilet to tap is a huge issue. The use of reclaimed water, treating it, which the city of Tampa and maybe some other folks are advocating. Maybe Tampa Bay Water, I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that's a huge subject, and we're going to talk about that another day. Jason.
I just wanted to address briefly, if you recall, in the Tampa Bay Times editorial that addressed the issue with Zephyr Hills, I wanted to read this one quote in regards to toilet to tap. The Times has been incredibly defensive on toilet to tap. And listen to this exact quote in regards to what they said. They said, "It's a huge waste. This is a huge waste, and local leaders need to get to the politics and messaging right so that further scientific studies can explore more sensible public use for this valuable resource." As in, it's not about the science, it's about the messaging.
We've got a caller also that wants to weigh in on this. He's been waiting for about 3.5 minutes. We're going to bring him in now. Caller, you're on the air. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, is this me?
Yes, it's you.
So this is Jerry. I'm in St. Pete.
Hi, Jerry.
So first of all, I really want to acknowledge WNMF for addressing this issue. Very complex issue. It's not an easy package. I mean, I not for 1 second think it's an easy package. So getting to the question and trying to condense it, it's really about carrying capacity, and it's really a global issue beyond the local issue. However, my local question is, why aren't we addressing WMNF and everybody, our local institutions, on carrying capacity are local planners, and bringing those people in on a regular basis, because we're going to need them on a regular basis to address the carrying capacity issues. That's one. And two, just out of curiosity, has anybody over there read Critical Path by Buckminster Fuller or Power Down by Richard Heinberg? They've spelled this stuff out, but it's not everybody can read that stuff. It's complex for me, so I'm assuming it's complex for other people too. The guy's very complex. He's dead. Fuller, the inventor of the geodesic dome. I mean, it's out there, but thank you again to WNF for addressing the issue. Highly complex, but we have these institutions. We have this information out there. Can you address those two specific questions?
Thank you, Jerry.
I'll take my thing off air. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much for your comment. Appreciate that.
We'll come back to that in 1 second. You have another call, Mary?
I do. I have multiple calls, and I have a text message here as well. This is from William, WMNF supporter in Lutz, Florida, says urban growth doesn't have to be allowed just because the developers want to make more money. There's something to be said for intelligent, controlled growth, and that comes from William.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
And I did want to get to this, and I'm going to give you one word to get us there, which is sprawl. Okay? And Steve Spina, city councilman from Zephyr Hills, you guys are sort of the classic sprawl area. You used to be an individual little town doing your own thing. But over the years, when the roads got built and everything else, Zephyr Hills has pretty much become a bedroom community of Tampa and Hillsborough County. I'm sure a lot of your folks commute.
Wesley Chapel, too.
Wesley
you want
Chapel,
to talk
Matt.
about sprawl. The southern tier of Pasco County
Unincorporated,
is
correct?
unincorporated. Pasco County is huge. To kind of go back to the one question about smart planning, we've adopted a ordinance that is called Florida Water Star that is submitted through SwiftMud, and that provides different codes for new development. So we can require subdivisions to not use St. Augustine grass, for example.
Nice.
To put in different landscaping. They have another.
Let me cut you off there because I thought I was doing some research yesterday. It says that City of Tampa estimates the water usage is twice that for a single family home compared to the same family living in a multifamily house. And
Right.
really that relates to irrigation.
Irrigation, we're increasing our reclaimed water capacity and extending water lines through the city. SwiftMud also has a program we're looking at that provides funding to retrofit existing apartments where you can put in new water, appliances that are better use of water.
So suffice it to say, Steve, we have hit an open nerve. I think that's appropriate to say because the phone lines are blowing up. We've got text messages and emails coming in. I'm just going to read one real quick. Callers, we see you there. We're going to get to you. Please don't hang up. Some of you have been holding for upwards of 6.5 minutes. It says, so this comes to us from Bernard Coachman. He says, how about not stripping the land and killing everything? And then planting grass that needs poison and fertilizer, as we were talking about here just a moment ago, every 3 months. Bernie, he says, this is Bernie. I drive a concrete truck and I see it every day and it's heartbreaking. So, and we have problems sometimes with runoff, and then we have algae blooms, and then things get even more complicated. That's and the Sierra Club might have something to say about that.
Yeah, Mariella, I want to hear from you and Jen both on this issue, and this all relates to sprawl, to why single-family homes that just keep going further and further out. Polk County is growing tremendously, and we really need a Polk County representative here today. Pinellas a little bit less, and they're doing more infill. But Mariella, you and I have been talking about sprawl for 20-something years.
And Sierra Club says sprawl costs us all. And in the South, they say sprawl costs us all, y'all.
Y'all.
But it costs us all because the farther we spread out growth, and the thinner the lower densities spread out farther, that is growth that costs more in terms of infrastructure, not just water, although certainly the pipes to get water and to drain wastewater, but also the roads, the schools, the fire rescue systems. And in South Hillsborough County, where we were really experiencing the same thing you were going through, Mr. Spina, in Zephyr Hills, fire rescue times were getting dangerously long. And Sheriff, all of that, and not to mention parks and social services, gets more and more expensive for the single-family homes spread out in sprawl. Whereas when you do infill, tight, urban development, transit-oriented development, and fill in your urban area, it's much less expensive.
Like the apartments downtown Tampa
To
or downtown
provide that.
St. Petersburg.
Right.
To me, that's a big part of the solution, and I want you guys' input on that. But as a city councilman in the city of Tampa, I was always thrilled to see multifamily, high-rise, mid-rise, even low-rise, but multifamily, just for these reasons. Transportation, of course, we'll have to talk about another day, but including the water issues. Jen.
Absolutely. And as somebody that lives in an apartment downtown,
aren't you urban?
I am, but again, that product was not available when I was younger, and I'm glad to see it available today. And
it was only available if you were willing to live in the YMCA downtown.
that's good point. But WaterStar is a great program, and remember, you have to build to the regulations that are surrounding you. So elected officials have a great position right now to recognize what works, what does not work, and make some changes. So if you don't want to see sprawl, don't approve low density subdivisions. That's it. And guess what? It won't happen. It will happen differently. But I agree with a lot of what Mariella says about the drag on resources. You do need a diversity of housing product, and so it's just a question of how do we get there.
But I gotta. We all kind of looked wide-eyed when you said, don't approve those low-density sprawl communities. We could talk a long time about that, but let me just say and ask Steve and Mariella, who both sat there in that decision-making role. A lot of times, the comprehensive plan, which was adopted 10, 15, 20 years ago, allows those low density projects. They're sort of out there lurking on the books down Lithia Pinecrest Road or up 301. And then all of a sudden a developer / owner comes along and says, wait a second, I got a comp plan that allows this, Steve. Mm-hmm. Steve Spina, city councilman in Zephyr Hills. I've got a comp plan that allows it. You need to allow that rezoning. You need to allow that PD. And if you don't, we're going to sue you. And that happens quite a bit, doesn't it, Mariella? Steve?
Yes, yeah. And that's one of the things we're doing with our moratorium. We're readdressing some of the items in our land development code. So we're looking at density issues, zoning issues, neighborhoods, lot sizes. All of that will be part of what we do during this moratorium.
So you're going to take this on in the comprehensive plan, which is really where it needs to be addressed.
Right.
Okay. Mario, what do you got?
I've got a text message I want to read to you real quick, and then the 3 callers that are on hold, the 4 callers actually. I'm coming to you next. Have your comment succinctly prepared, because as we're coming to the last 15 minutes of our show, we want to make sure everybody's recognized. The email, or I should say the text, comes to us by way of Bubba. He signs it.
Bubba.
Hey, Bubba. Bubba. And he says, what do y'all think about the weird lagoons that are being built in Pasco in new ugly developments like Murata? I think this is the worst example of waste and excess in Florida. Bubba, we couldn't agree with you more.
I've been wondering how they do that. If they chlorinate a whole lake or something?
We couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to go to Jack in Ellington. Jack, you're on the air, please.
Manatee County,
Yes, Jack, you're on the air. Give us your comment, please. Be brief. Thank you for holding, by the way. Thank you.
County in the early 70s.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, we had a multi-year, I don't know if anybody there recalls, but we had a multi-year, very serious drought. And people were moving down and buying lakefront property in their docks, after they were outraged because their docks went nowhere. There was no water under their docks. I mean, lakes literally shriveled up all over the place. Water restrictions were draconian. But at some point, somebody has to. I mean, we've been fortunate not to have a drought like that, but that doesn't mean it won't come again. And then somebody somewhere needs to introduce the idea of homeostasis, equilibrium, that things in balance maybe growth isn't a good idea. There's a limit. So,
hey, Jack, thank you so much, because you just let me segue into another topic that I want to hit before we run out of time.
Excellent commentary, Jack. Thank you.
Which is climate change. Okay, sort of the elephant in the room. Mariella, Sierra Club representative, lifetime environmentalist. Climate change really might impact a lot of these projections, and just in terms of, X amount of rainfall. Well, that X amount that we've always sort of relied on, give or take 5 or 10%, might change significantly. Sea level rise could put more pressure on the saltwater intrusion and push that line of salt water further and further inland. Some of those are big changes. And then you've got, if it's been hot the last couple of days, so we can all relate to this, but if it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, you've got evaporation. How does that impact our reservoir and our rivers and streams and that sort of thing?
All of that is a whole other can of worms that will be impacting growth and require some changes in our comprehensive plan as well for the coastal areas in particular. And I was very strong about not increasing density in the coastal areas, residential density in the coastal areas, and submitting more and more people to the dangers of flooding. But it's not only along the coast, even upstream on the Alafaya River, we have a lot of flooding whenever we have summer rain events, not just a hurricane. And when we really address that in our comprehensive plan, everybody's insurance stays low because of a rating number that the insurance companies have that is based on how well your government is protecting property from the impacts of climate change.
It'd be nice if Tallahassee actually mandated that with the insurance companies, because I sure haven't seen it, on my insurance bill.
We've got a caller here from St. Pete I'd like to bring on the air. He's been holding for 12 and a half minutes. Daryl, you're with us. Thank you so much for holding. Your comment, please.
Yes, I'm in my 70s and, of course, grew up here. And I spent a huge amount of time on the water, under the water, both in Tampa Bay, out in the Gulf. I've also paddled the rivers for decades and the lakes. And I've also been a mountain biker for over 30 years. Can't call it mountains in Florida, but I've watched the massive destruction of a lot of our natural areas here. They paid Paradise to put up the parking lot. And the destruction that I've seen, I go, this is all in violation of the Florida State Constitution. I don't understand why everybody ignores this. Article 2, Section 7 of the state Constitution states, it's got subsection, I won't go to that. Natural resources and scenic beauty. It shall be the policy of the state to conserve and protect its natural resources and scenic beauty. Adequate provision shall be made by law for the abatement of air and water pollution and excessive and unnecessary noise, and for the conservation and protection of natural resources.
Wow.
And that seems to be being ignored. It's in our state constitution. And I'll give a quick example. In South St. Petersburg, there was a beautiful piece of property, many acres, down near the Skyway, and it was full of beautiful oak trees and pine trees, and it could have been made almost into a park. The developer came, next time I came by, the developer had chopped virtually everything down, denuded it down to sand, and they left a couple of trees. I go, this is the kind of thing that just outrages me, that we supposedly have laws that are supposed to prevent that, but so long as they pay their protection fees, they're able to get away with just, they could have developed that differently and preserved a lot of that and almost made it like a park and still been able to develop it, but that isn't how they did it. They chopped everything down so nothing would be in the way to impede their quick development and building.
Daryl, you sound like the type of gentleman that we would all like to have a café con leche with, because you've got some great information that you're sharing with us. I'd like to say that Jack, when he called earlier from Sarasota, he mentioned the term homeostasis, and I wanted to read to our listening audience. It's referred to as the tendency toward a relative stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by physiological processes. And that sounds to me like what you're describing as well. And hopefully we can come to a reasonable conclusion with this. But listen, in the meantime, stay healthy. Keep doing what you're doing. And by all means, keep listening to Down and Dirty. We appreciate your comments. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
And-
I've been
and- and
active
Daryl,
for
I gotta-
50 some years.
Daryl, I got to say that practicing law in Florida and environmental law, land use law, I've never seen anybody bring up the Florida Constitution, but I think it's a good idea. Mariella.
Yes, I think one thing that he brought to mind is that so often large developers of large subdivisions in particular, especially the sprawl variety, would rather ask forgiveness than permission in taking when
down
we
trees.
just had that in the Keystone area with a large developer, Taylor Morrison, taking out a ton of old growth trees that we ended up fining them $300,000, but that's just a cost of doing business for them. Same with a lot of environmental.
Less than the cost of one house.
Right. There's a lot of environmental damage gets done that way, and we need to really tighten up and put more teeth in our laws, which there are ways to do that.
But those laws are so contradictory, and I'm not going to talk about the project because I'm not familiar with it, but I will say that there has to be a balance, and that balance sometimes is, look, people are not going to stop having children. We're going to have growth, even if you shut the door on the state of Florida and lock it and throw away the key, you're still going to have growth. So we've got to plan for it. We've got to address it. We got to figure out better mousetraps, but we got to build those mousetraps.
Jennifer, can we come up with a viable solution? Something like, okay, you can move to Florida, but you can't have any kids. I'm just saying one or the other. Move to Florida, or you can't have any kids. Where's my sound effect? My guy's there he is. I've been waiting all day for that. Tongue in cheek, of course.
Steve Spina, City Councilman of Zephyr Hills. I want to go back to the issue of climate change. You talked about you and Billy are redoing your comprehensive plan. Are you building in, let's say, a little flexibility in terms of the climate change issues?
Not that I'm aware of. We haven't got that deeply into it yet. One thing we are looking at is strengthening our tree ordinance so that we can get around some of the issues that that the builders use and come in. I've seen a couple new developments in Zephyr Hills where they just come in, cut down every tree, and then they mitigate them.
Right.
And that's just not good enough. And I know the city...
And we've received no help from Tallahassee on the tree issue in the city of Tampa. They've basically told us that, they've preempted and gutted our local tree ordinance and made it much, much easier. Even though we had worked on a good tree ordinance, Jennifer, for many years, then all of a sudden the state comes in, preempts everybody, every local government, and says, go ahead and cut down what you want. Out in the country, in your area, Steve, it's sort of a different issue.
Right, and they've done the same thing with how high you can raise your impact fees. We need to raise the impact fees, and they put a limit on that. So it'll take you 4 years to get up to where you need to be.
I've got a real quick comment that came in on a text message. It says, did you all see the Washington Post article about how wealthy developer Maury Hosseini, I believe is how you pronounce it, is getting a sweetheart deal? He's getting a new interchange built off of I-95 in Volusia County to help his new ugly subdivision. Hosseini has given a lot of expensive gifts to our Governor DeSantis, such as a golf simulator and flights on Hosseini's private jet. So much grift, so much corruption, it really he's really PO'd, it says here. It pisses me off, I guess you can say that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that David Bryant sends that in, and we've got somebody that wants to offer a quick comment as we come to the close of the show on impact fees. I've got to give him credit. He's been on the line for 17 and a half minutes. I'm going to bring him in now. Jeff, please make your comment about impact fees as it was just brought to bear.
Yeah, good timing. This is John Dingfeller, one of his biggest fans, Jeffrey Natupski. I got a quick perspective. So from a problem-solving perspective, the builders contribute to impact fees, and that's nice. But how open are the builders to actually contributing more towards the infrastructure to manage and handle the residents coming to a particular area of development? That's all.
All right. You teed that one up, Jeff. Thanks for
Perfectly.
your nice words toward me and Jennifer.
Yeah. And that's the rub right there.
What is an impact fee for people who don't know?
Thank you.
An impact fee is a fee that a builder is charged at certificate of occupancy for infrastructure improvements. It's supposed to pay for the impact of that home or apartment or whatever it is. But that's a great point that was brought up, and I do want to address it because that is some of the reason why you do have sprawl. Because developers put in infrastructure and they buy cheaper land so that they can pay for the road and they can pay for the school and
all
they
right,
can
but
pay
we've
for all
only
those
got about
things.
2 minutes left. We're going to hear from everybody. Last minute words, Mariella, on impact fees or whatever you wish.
Man, I was working to convince our county to raise impact fees 20 years before I became a commissioner, believe it or not. And when I became a commissioner, I worked hard on that because at the time, but in 2018, we were losing $13,000 per home in the impacts of development as determined by a study that was really, in my view, very favorable to developers. So it's really important to get development paying its fair share. We were able to raise impact fees. We need to do a lot more. But as Mr. Spina mentioned, the state has really kind of limited what we can do in that regard.
And with the political winds changing on county commissions and city councils, these things sort of come and go. Steve, last words.
I just think we're trying, in Zephyr Hills, trying to be responsible stewards and making sure we're addressing all the issues before they get out of hand. And that's really all we're trying to do and look to the future.
All right. I appreciate the three of you for all of your public service, your community service. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you to everyone that called in today, that sent their text messages, that sent their emails. We couldn't read them all, but we heard you. We see you out there, and we thank you so much for participating in our show. Dave from Sarasota, we see you out there on reclaimed water and water usage. We'll have to bring you in next week.
Next week? What do we got?
Yeah, next week. What a great segue. Thanks for asking. Where's that bell? Thanks for asking. Next week, Down and Dirty will have the president. There it is. Down and Dirty will have the president of the local Young Republicans face off versus the president of the Young Democrats. Will bring the boxing gloves and the salve, debating on some 200 controversial laws passed by the governor and this Republican legislature. It's been a fascinating show, everybody. Thank you so much for participating. We couldn't have done it without you. We would have tried, but it wouldn't have been very successful. Thanks to everybody for being here today. Let me say that, Johnny, any closing comments real quick?
Yeah, I just, this issue has been near and dear to me for 20, 25 years. When I went to city council, I raised a lot of these issues. Mariella, you've raised these issues. Steve, Jennifer, in your own way, you've raised these issues. And you've been a very reasonable representative of Tampa Bay builders. We appreciate that. These issues will not go away. We cannot barricade the doors closed at the Georgia line. Folks are going to come, but we need to do a better job as a community to address these issues.
I do agree completely. Let me say in closing, I'll read this one last text message that came in. It says, so I read in today's Tampa Bay Times that USF plans to close its golf course and pave it as a parking lot. Talk about horrendous idea for our environment. Thank you so much for sending that email. And let me say, on behalf of my broadcast partner, John Dingfelder, our engineer, Jason Marlowe, our phone screener and part-time producer, Lynn Marvin Dingfelder.
Lynn.
Yay. Lenny, thank you for answering the phones for us, Lynn. I'm Mario Nunez wishing you salud and happy days. We'll be on the lookout for you next week here on Down and Dirty. Stay tuned now in just a couple of minutes for The Skinny with Ray Roa, Ben Montgomery, and Mitch Perry. Like to say, have a nice weekend, everybody.
Salud and happy days.
And go Rays.